Hi, everyone. Okay, you guys, I am so stoked about our speaker today. It's going to be a real treat. And I think once we get into it, then you guys will know why I had her come on. But one thing that I want to share with you is a little bit about why I decided to go ahead and bring her on. This is Trisha. She's been a doctor of Oriental Medicine for over 20 years. She has performed well in excess of over 48,000 treatments in her career. And she discovered a link between 5-element theory in Chinese medicine and our dreams. Are you guys dreamers? If you're a dreamer, go ahead and put dreamer in the comments so that I can see that I'm not alone. Okay. All right. Well, her first book was published in 2008 called We Dream in Chinese, and it was updated to be included in her new book called Your Health Nanny. And it's listed on Amazon. I'll share the link with you in just a moment. If you guys are interested, I think you'll be really pleased with it. She's also currently working on a new book right now called Frequency, and a new project and business called Rebirth Memorial Park and Topiary Garden, getting ready to launch in Mississippi. So that's very exciting as well. She is happily divorced, has a beautiful son and granddaughter, and lives with her best friend, Reagan, who is a 13-year-old Chiweenie. And I used to have a couple of Chiweenies too. They are so adorable. Ours were named Mr. Darcy and this is my daughter who likes Pride and Prejudice. I can't remember the other one's name. Bailey. I was like, thank you, Braxy. So I am super pleased to bring on the amazing Trisha, and I'm going to go ahead and let her say her last name. What is your last name, sweetie?
Last name is Philkades. It's a Greek name, so people butcher it all the time. I'm used to it.
I didn't want to do that, so I thought I would let you tell us how to pronunciate it correctly. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link to her book here in the comments so you guys can check that out, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook or wherever you might be watching from. So thank you so much for coming here. When you and I were talking on the phone about you coming on and sharing some of this information, I related a dream of mine. And so I know spot on with accuracy how good you are at this. I'd love to have you go ahead and share a little bit about your background and how you got into this, if you don't mind.
Well, how I got into this, it actually all started when I was about 10 years old. And I had a dream, well, actually a nightmare. So nightmares are one of those things I think I shared with you. It's like when your body is trying to tell you something, it's like, hello, I'm telling you something. And when you don't listen, it's like, that's like your mom told you to put your clothes away and you didn't do it. She comes back later, you're still there. She's a little bit more angry, right? The third time she has to come back, that's the nightmare. And so with this nightmare, it was my little sister. We were at the beach and my little sister was in the car, and I could see from outside of the dream the car going down into the water. And then I was part of the dream where I was trying to get her out of the car. And I got out and I woke up and I was gasping for air. It turned out if I knew then what I know now, I would be a very different person. I was very dehydrated. At only 10 years old, first thing you want to do when you get up is you want to go out and play with your friends. You don't think about drinking water. You don't even think about eating. You just, throw on your clothes and run outside. And so I'd had this dream twice, and being severely dehydrated, I knew there was something about dreams that I needed to know. And then I learned more about it when I was in school to be a doctor of Oriental Medicine. We were studying the 5-element theory, and I was noticing that my dreams were correlating with what I was learning. I had just assumed it was that correlation, but it turned out as I got to looking more into it, it was the dreams were relaying the information that was going on inside my body. In other words, they're symptoms of your yin organs. So I put it 2 and 2 together and got 4 and wrote the book, and here I am.
That is amazing. And so now if somebody was wanting to interpret their own dreams, does the book give you like charts and strategies so that you could do that for yourself? Like if somebody is educated on the elements and whatnot. Could they be able to decipher this kind of stuff?
Yes, and so that's why I wrote the book. I have the Dream Matrix, which I did send you a copy for everyone who
Oh,
can
yes.
download if they want it. And so the Dream Matrix is something that I did not create. It is the 5-element theory, and so it is based on life, but it also works with your dreams as well, which is still life, but it was an area that was not intended for that, and so that the book tells you about the different dreams that some of my patients and I have had, and then it breaks it down for you to find those clues on that dream matrix so you can determine which organ is being affected and which organ is trying to speak to you through your dreams that needs some attention.
Okay, now I'm going to go grab the Dream Matrix, and I'm going
Okay,
to go ahead and turn the time over to you. I already told you I was going to turn the time over to you anyway to share some
great.
stories. So I'll go ahead and do that now, and I'll grab that and share that with people. Does that work?
That'll work, and that way they can kind of follow along with what I'm saying.
Yay! Okay,
Perfect.
this is awesome. Thank you so much, Trisha.
Thank you. Okay, so anyway, as I was telling Tammy, this started when I was 10 years old. And so, but it took me a while to figure out what exactly was going on. Then I started interviewing my patients. Like I said, I've done well in excess of 48,000 treatments. I was at a clinic we were the busiest clinic in the United States at the time. And so I had access to a lot of patients. So I was not doing the diagnosis. The other practitioner was doing that. And so when I would talk to the patients about their dreams, and they would tell me, I would look at the dream matrix that you're going to get a copy of, and then look at their diagnosis. And they were spot on 100% of the time. So I knew I was on to something. So if you think about it, the body has several organs in it, and they all have different functions. So with the 5-element theory, we have the fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. I know you're thinking wind is in there somewhere, but that's something a little bit different. 5-element theory uses those 5. And they have a controlling cycle that, or destructive cycle that practitioners will use to treat the body to get more effective results from it. So here's an example. So in the earth element is the spleen and the stomach. You've had a stomach ache before. You know what that feels like. But have you ever had a spleen ache? Who knows? What would that feel like? How would that manifest itself? Well, the spleen is what's called a yin organ, and all of the yin organs are not connected to the pain center. And so when they have a problem, they have to have a way to communicate with you. So if you've ever read the Bible, and I'm sure all of you have, there are many references to visions. So Joseph may had a vision that he needed to go to Galilee and save whoever. And so those are actually references to dreams, and they just call them visions, and other things in the Bible as well. So what the body does is, as your mind's eye travels through the body, it checks the health of the different organs. If there is a problem with it, your body will say, okay, here's an issue. So it's going to pick up a minute chemical change in that organ. So as it travels through the body, that all goes to the liver. The liver is like the general. He's in charge of everything. And he's the one that's taking all of these notes. It says, oh, spleen's not doing very well. So it sends the information to the heart. Now the heart is in charge of the mind, or the Shen, and it's the one that creates the dreams. So it gets all of these notes that there are issues going on with the body. And what it does is it goes to the right side of the brain, and it collects information. It's like, what sort of clues can we give our host? So anything that's related to those issues, it will pull out. Dreams are your thoughts, your images, and your emotions. So we'll take clues from there and sends it all to the left side of the brain, or the logical side of the brain. And it says, okay, now make me a storyboard. And the left side is going, are you kidding? What are we going to come up with this? So this is why your dreams are kind of interesting and a little bit weird, because it takes a weird collection of clues that it is trying to get the point across to you. Like I said, it's like your mom saying, you got to pick up your stuff. And so once you have that dream, those clues are supposed to let you know that there is a problem. And so doesn't mean that there's a bad problem. It just means kind of like a headache, something's wrong. Maybe you drank too much the night before, who knows? But that's why you have a headache. And so what we typically do, we take aspirin and headache goes away, all is good. So when your body is saying, hey, there's a problem inside, we need to kind of correct this, then you have the opportunity to do that before it becomes a serious problem. Now, your yin organs are the ones that Western medicine terms as the silent killers because they're not connected to the pain center. But they are far from being silent. That's what your dreams are all about. So we don't dream for mystical reasons or magical or ways to communicate with the dead. It's just not how that works. It's just because 99% of your dreams are about you and about what's going on inside your body. One of the things that I really was excited when I wrote this book was about pregnant women, because pregnant women are going to know a problem with their fetus long before their doctor will, because as their mind's eye travels through their body, it's also going to see the health of the fetus as well. This is one thing that in Chinese medicine, I treat children and infants, especially with colic. I don't have to actually put a needle in an infant. I treat the mother for what I would normally treat the child for, and then I lay the infant on mom's chest. The frequency is what corrects the baby's problem. So anyway, learning a little bit more about Chinese medicine can be very helpful. And in the book, it does give a lot of examples, a lot of my patients' dreams that they shared with me, and a lot of my dreams as well. I remember when my little sister's 5 years old, she woke up screaming, woke up the entire house because she had this dream that this horse was getting ready to eat her head. And all she could see was the big black mouth of the horses. As he opened his mouth wider, it just got bigger and bigger. So all of the colors, the emotions, the what they call the office, etc., all are incorporated into your dream, and that's how you determine on that dream matrix what is going on. So here's an example. I had a patient who was a construction worker. Now this guy was 6'8". He was a big guy, and he was doing a jackhammer. And you've got to be pretty doggone strong to even hold on to those things, and they will tear up your muscles because they take a lot of strength to hold on to. So he was tearing up some concrete. He did not wear a mask to protect his lungs. Needless to say, I punched him in the arm and said, don't ever do that again. And so he ended up having a dream, and it was that he was driving a car very aggressively in this downtown area, and everything was white. And so when I was talking to him about it, and when you get your dream matrix, you'll see what I'm talking about. So the aggressiveness has to do with the liver, because the liver, like I said, is in charge of everything. And the liver issue because you've ever gone into a bar and all of a sudden you hear someone in the back like yelling really loud or laughing really loud. Well, that's from too much alcohol. So the liver is negatively affected as a result of that. And so it has a lot to do with aggression. If you're going to have a bar fight, it's from the liver, right? So his muscles that the liver is in charge of were damaged from doing the jackhammer. And so that was from the aggressive driving. Now, the buildings, if you look under architects, you'll see on the left side of the columns, that's the offices, and then the elements up on top, and then you cross those over, and then you see what it is that you're looking at. So the office of the lung has to do with architecture. So that's where the buildings came in at. The color associated with lungs is white. So it was telling us that his liver was damaged and that his lungs were damaged because he was not wearing a mask. And so that's how you find the different things. You write down everything that you remember about that dream. So I will tell people a lot of times that, so for instance, I had a dream the other day. I had a couple lemon drops, which I don't normally drink, but it was my birthday. We were celebrating. And so I'd had a couple of them. So that night I ended up having a dream that I was in this old house. And every time I have a dream of my son, he's small again. He's an infant. And in this house, it was hardwood floors, but there were a lot of holes in the hardwood floors. And so that was kind of my liver telling me, hey, that whiskey or the vodka, excuse me, did not do you very good. And so there you go. There is your dream matrix. And so anyway, no more vodka for me. So you'll see the category down the side, and then of course the different elements up on top. And so going down to the office, about a fourth of the way down, and take that over to architect, that's in the metal element, and you'll see the color is white, and the yin organ or the zhang organ is lungs. And that's what he was referring to when he had that dream. So it will tell you you've caused a problem, and now we need to correct the problem. So how the 5 elements works is pretty simple. Each, like I said, is either a controlling or a destructive. So when you have wood, the wood feeds the fire, right? The fire nourishes the earth houses the metals, and the metals enrich the water. But if you go the opposite way, the water will put out the fire because it goes in an opposite star. The water puts out the fire. The fire will melt the metal. The metal pierces the earth, and the metal also cuts the wood, and that's called the destructive cycle. So anyway, you can find out a lot about your dreams and what your dreams are telling you according to this. It is not 100% accurate, but like I said, I did not create this chart. This was in one of my acupuncture books. Another dream that I'll tell you about, just so you can kind of get the idea of how to make that connection, is one dream was I was at a McDonald's. Now, I do not think McDonald's is food in any way, but, those French fries, we've been with those, since we were kids. So if you look down in the earth element and you go down to the duty is called nourishing. And so being some form of food, that's where the McDonald's came in at. So we know right now that the spleen has an issue going on. So in that dream, I looked over at this car wash. So it was a structure. So we can look at it again from the architect point of view under the metal element. And it had 5 bays in it. And so it was just, they may have just been there anyway, but in my mind, I counted it. So I knew that number 5, if you look on the very bottom, the number 5 is also under the earth element or the spleen. And so in that dream, I had my little white dog. You'll notice that anytime you have a dream of your pets, it's almost always the white or the black pet. Very seldom will you get, your apricot colored poodle. They just don't show up in the dreams because the white and the black are the ones that are telling you things. So my white dog showed up. White will tell me again that it has to do with lungs. Plus, dogs, like a lot of material, have a texture to them that also indicates spleen. That is not on this 5 element or this matrix, but I will tell you, just because that was something I learned after the fact, and that texture does have to do with spleen. And so in this dream, I was laying there at the McDonald's, seeing the car wash, and then my then husband was going to go for a run. And there was only about 15 people in the run. So you look down again at the number 5. 15 is a multiple of 5. So you will sometimes see multiples as well. It still counts. It doesn't have to be the 5. It can be a multiple of. So I knew I had something going on with my spleen and my lungs. Many times when you have lung things happening, it's going to be kidney related as well. And this is why. There's a reason why God gave you 2 kidneys and 2 lungs. Everything else is a solo act. And I'm not talking glands, so don't be thinking of your thyroid gland. I'm thinking just the organs. And so if you have a problem with one, you will have a problem with the other one because they work together. So as your lungs breathe in the oxygen, there's a certain amount of moisture in that oxygen. And so as that oxygen comes down, the heat from the kidneys comes up, turns into steam, and that's what helps your digestion, which is of course in the middle. So your kidneys are the core heater of the body. So which is why we want to keep them warm and comfortable. This is why the Chinese have what's called a hara belt that goes around your midsection. It's black in order for the sun to hit it and keep your kidneys warm and comfortable. So this is something that you will see not just in your dreams, but you'll see it in real life. So we used to own a gym, and we had a client that would come in, and she was kind of a funny lady, and she kind of pathetic. She would come in, and I'd say, "How are you doing today?" We called her Eeyore. She'd say, "Oh, the mother-in-law is in town and I gotta clean the house." And she was just so beside herself the whole time. But if you look down under the water element and you go down to sound, you'll see the sound of groaning. And people who groan like that are definitely deficient in their kidneys. There are a lot of different ways that you can increase the function of your kidneys, but this was something that she was definitely a very, very deficient here. I used to have another patient who would come in, and she smelled like she'd been eating Chinese food. And I was like, Margaret, I was like, did you just come from a Chinese restaurant? And she said, no. Why? Because she smelled salty. So you look at the water element and you go down to taste, and the taste is salty because the earth, 3/4 of the earth is made up of salt water. So if you have that, the kidneys being in the water element will tell you that it's a kidney related issue. So there are several other things to know. So the spleen and the pancreas, you'll see that it's SP for spleen and pancreas in parentheses. They're considered one organ system in Chinese medicine, even though they have separate functions, but it does have to do with the blood sugar in the body. So as the blood sugar goes up, it's causing damage to the spleen. So this is something that we can correct with food, which your health nanny has a lot of tips on food. You can correct a lot of things this way, but your dreams, whenever I do a diagnosis on people, we do the tongue diagnosis where we look at the tongue, and whatever happens inside the body will flower out onto the tongue. The other thing we do is feel the pulses, because all of the pathways in the body will terminate at a position on the wrist. So by feeling those, I can tell the health or the condition of those different organs. The other way of doing it is, of course, through your dreams. Tell me what your dreams are about, and that confirms my diagnosis, and that way I know how to treat you effectively. You'll see these in a lot of people. Earth element people are usually very very nice people. They're usually women that have like slightly bigger hips, they're and the thicker legs. I'm not saying anything bad about that. I'm just saying this is a visual theme that you will see, that someone is very earthy. And they're also very, it sounds like every time they're talking, it sounds like they're singing. They're enjoyable to listen. I mean, they're very nice people. Your fire people, those are the ones that are usually the runners, very tall, thin, red hair, it's like go, go, go. They're very fire people. You're going to get combinations of a lot of different people in here as well. Metal is someone who is very structured. I had a friend of mine, everything in his house was white or metal, and the color associated with metal here is white. And he, everything was in his place, and there was a place for everything. Everything was white. By God, not even a hair out of place on this guy. He was very metal. Then you get the water people that kind of float all over the place, right? They're not very organized. They like the darker things in black. The liver one, those are the people who are maybe angry about something. They want to be in charge of everything. So liver people can be a good thing. They can also turn on you rather quickly. So you can go through this chart to see the different things that are associated with the people. Now, here's one thing that I want you to seriously think about. And I love telling this story because if it can help anybody, I'm all for it. So I used to be a smoker. Bad, nasty, awful habit. Please don't ever start that. And if you have started, it's time to stop. So here was the dream that I had that got me to stop smoking. After I learned this and figured out what I was doing, started writing the book, I had this dream that I was going down Interstate 40. I was heading home to a little town called Moriarty, which is outside of Albuquerque. You go through the mountainous area. And so through that area, there's this area called Cedillo Hill. It's kind of like the high point, between the two cities. And as I was going there, all of a sudden, I was like on this little mini bike. Now, what is a mini bike? It's metal, right? So right then we're thinking lung. And then there was this bridge going over the highway. It's not really there, but my mind created one. So here we are thinking office of the architect, right? Because who builds bridges? And so the next thing, I'm driving on the highway. The next thing I know, I'm on that bridge and I'm driving over the highway. And then I started to go down this clover leaf. Now on this clover leaf was snow. And so as I'm circling down to come onto the highway, the snow is getting blacker and blacker and blacker. And then there was 4, count them 4, which is a multiple of liver, which is the number 8. And so I'm going around these metal spikes in the road, all 4 of them, to get onto the highway. And it was very dark, and I remember feeling very lonely. And then as I'm driving along, I look over to the left, and there was this big black semi truck, black kidney, right? Lung, kidney. One, if you have a problem with one, you're going to have a problem with the other. And on that black truck, there was a picture of this woman in a white dress, and she had red lipstick, and there was 2 guys in suits on either side of her. And I remember thinking to myself in the dream, that looks like a cigarette ad. Sure enough, that's what my dream was trying to tell me. Whenever you see that little spot of red in your dream, that's your dream saying, hey, I'm talking about you. I'm not talking about anyone else. This is about you. I want you to listen. And that was that red lipstick. And the blonde in the white dress was me. The 2 guys on the other side in the black suits was my son and my then husband. It was very clear to me the next day, after thinking about this for a while, that was a coffin. And the dream was telling me, if you don't quit smoking, your husband and your son are going to bury you. Guess what I did? I quit smoking the next day. It's like, I'm not ready to die. I'm not ready to leave this earth. I quit smoking. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, but one of the best things I've ever done in my life. So your dreams will tell you that there is a problem. Sometimes they'll tell you how to correct it. So here's another situation that you might find in your dreams. Now your spine, if you look at it, kind of looks like a staircase, right? So if you have a dream that you're like climbing something and you're like struggling to get up that, the idea that you're struggling will tell you that you're weak, which thinks spleen function, because spleen is in charge of immunity. But as you're struggling to get up there, you're struggling to get that energy up the spine. You will wake up with some sort of a sickness the next day. So there are herbs that you can take to to stop that thing in its tracks, but just know that you're going to wake up with something. Now, going the opposite direction, if you were to have a dream that everything fell, and you were falling. And I know I used to have a lot of these dreams because I have the scoliosis, the double curve of the spine. So I always have kidney related issues. I'll explain that in a minute. But if you have things that are falling, that will tell you what's at the bottom of the stairs is the kidneys. So I said in the beginning that had I known what I knew then that I know now, I would be a very different person. So when I was severely dehydrated at age 10, my mom never thought about it. I mean, she figures if they're thirsty, they'll drink. If they're hungry, they'll eat, and that's just, it makes sense. But at a 10-year-old mind is like, all I wanted to do is go play. Being severely dehydrated, that did negatively affect my kidneys. The kidneys are in charge of structure and function of the body. The structure being the backbones, are most leg bones, and the functional part being all of the joints. And so from being dehydrated, it did affect my spine, my bones. Because 2 years later, my sister and I are jumping on the bed and doing flips, which you're not supposed to do, right? So my mom ended up calling my sister into the other room. She didn't know we were jumping on the bed. So my sister takes off and I keep jumping on the bed. And so as I'm doing that, as I turned, my right knee came up, hit myself in the chest. I landed on the floor on my feet against the wall. My legs gave out and I slid down the wall. A few months later, we're in the learner shopping for school clothes, and my mom looks and she says, "You have a funny bone." So being only 12 years old, I was horribly embarrassed because all these women are coming over to look at my funny bone. And what it was is my right shoulder was going forward because the spine was starting to twist and to bend. And so it forced my right shoulder, which my wing bone or the scapula was protruding. So we went to the doctor after that, and they did x-rays, discovered I have scoliosis, which is a double curvature of the spine. I relate that to the severe dehydration at 10 years old. And like I said, if I knew then what I know now, I would be very different. I know this does run in families because my granddaughter also has scoliosis, but so did her mother. So who knows, But anyway, as long as your body stays healthy, your dreams will tell you what it is that you need to be healthy, and it will show you ideas. Here's another situation talking about struggling. So I had this dream that I was in Mexico, and for some reason, my then husband and I were there, and for some reason, my in-laws were with us too. If I'm going on a vacation in Mexico, I was not going to bring the in-laws, but they were there in my dream. So for some reason, I had to go to the hospital. And so the doctor was concerned about me making it back to the hotel. So he said, well, let's get on the bikes and I'll make sure you get back. So we're on these two bikes and he is like long gone. I mean, he is up the hill. And I remember the hill was just dirt. I mean, so earth related, right? So the earth will tell you the spleen issue. Spleen is in charge of immunity. So I know I have a spleen thing going on. I'm struggling to get up this hill on this bike. I can hardly breathe. And so struggling to get up again, we know I've got something going on. But in this particular case, the dream gave me the solution as well. What happened was the next thing I know, I'm standing in the street in the middle of this intersection, and my in-laws were with me. And so I could hear something on the right ear, and then I could hear something around coming on the left ear. So I knew it was water, and we got up on the curb. Sure enough, a lot of water comes around, splashes in the middle of that intersection, and that was that. And then I woke up. So your ears are, if you look at your ears, they look like kidneys. These are the outward manifestation of your kidneys, which is why whenever a siren goes by or you go into a theater that's too loud, I plug my ears all the time. It kind of helps protect the kidneys a little bit. So the water was telling me you need a lot of water for this kidney, you need a lot of water for this kidney. And that when I woke up the next day, not only did I take my Chinese herbs, but I drank a lot of water, probably dehydrated again. And it's hard to remember to do that, to drink your water. So, and then of course I was fine after that. There are several other situations like this, but I will tell you part of the reason to have my book called Frequency that I'm working on now is because your dreams will also sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes be about a loved one. So you are a product of your mom and your dad. And so their frequencies matched, they make you. This is how the crying baby, mom knows which baby is her, the baby knows which mom is theirs. And this is why I treat infants by putting them on mom's chest, because the frequency can do the work for me. And so being a product of your parents, the frequency, this is when you see someone and you instantly like them. You don't know why. You just instantly like them. It's because their frequency matches yours. And by the same tune, you might see someone who's like, hey, I want to get away from that person. The quicker the better, because their frequency does not match with yours. So here's what happened. So one day we were going to Italy for a vacation. I highly recommend it. I love Italy. So we get to Italy and finally get into the hotel. We're ready to go to sleep so we can get up and have pizza and wine for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I was excited to be there. So that night I had a dream that my dad, I had gone to this event. We used to do several events where I used to work at. My thoughts, my images, my emotions, right? My history. So it was trying to tell me something. So at this event, there was a lot of green grass. Look at the color green, you'll see liver, right? And so it was also, there's a lot of, I was sitting at this white table and white fence or tents behind me. And I had called my then husband to come and bring me $5. Well, you look at 5 again, what's that? Spleen. So we know there's something wrong with immunity. And so instead of him showing up, my father had showed up and gave me the $5, but he looked really sad and I couldn't figure out why. So my father had a muscle-related disease. He had been a smoker for many years. And I'm telling you, your lungs do not heal completely once you quit smoking. They are always going to be weak. So if you're a smoker, quit now because you're still going to have trouble with it forever. And he did. So my father ended up with an infection in his lungs, which also affected his liver because of the muscle disease that he had, and he was in the hospital. And so the next morning we get up, we go down to the internet cafe, and I check my emails. My sister says, Daddy doesn't want me to tell you because he doesn't want to ruin your vacation, but he's in the hospital. It's like, well, the plane isn't leaving for a week, so just keep me informed. And this was a classic example in my first time ever of having a dream about somebody else. And this was my father. So his frequency was the same as mine. And I was half a world away. And it was that fast that something was going on with him. On occasion, you will have dreams about your family members. Almost never will it be like your best friend. Your dreams about ex-lovers or now that's kidney related, or good friends, it's almost always just because they're there. But usually ex-lovers is kidney related, so you want to be careful about that as well. So people do interesting things for that. I had a patient who was dreaming a lot about an ex-boyfriend. Even though she was living with a guy here in the States, he lived in Paris. And so she dropped everything and went out to Paris to see this old flame of hers for a couple of weeks. Of course, it didn't work out, came back, but by that time her boyfriend was gone. So she's kind of screwed herself over. So it could be interesting. I get a lot of stories about people's dreams, and I will never share names, but I do share the situations that are interesting. So look over the chart. If you have any questions, I think Tammy is putting up my email. I'm always happy to answer questions. But I do want you to look it over first. There it is. Trisha Philkades at gmail.com. You don't have to know how to say my name. Just spell it correctly if you want to get through to me. But anyway, look this over, see if there's anything that helps you. Now, Tammy, how much time do we have? Am I still going, or I'm looking at the clock here? Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted there. I didn't realize it. I had kids coming and going, you know. So I do have something else, but I can go ahead and give you about maybe 5 to 10 more minutes if that will work.
Yeah, that's totally. I just
Yeah.
didn't know what the timer.
No,
How
yeah,
much
you're
time
good.
I had.
Yeah,
All
you're
right.
totally good. Yeah, let's go for at least another 5 more minutes, 10 minutes.
You got it. You know, I could talk forever about
I
this.
love it. I love this stuff. I'm totally geeking out over here. I'm actually taking notes too.
Good. Well, you know, you have my email address, so you know you can always call me or email me, whichever works.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. So as you go through and you see the different dreams that you have, I always recommend that people write things down, because emotions, what you feel, is also very important. And so if you're feeling stressed about something, you're feeling like out of control about something, those all mean something. Now, let's go through each one here kind of slowly. So with the wood, like I said, that's the general. He's in control of everything. And so if the general's sick, usually the rest of the troops are sick as well. So with the fire element, that's the heart. The heart is a yin organ, even though it's in the fire element. So that is the one that is in charge of the dreams. That is the one who will create the dreams, which is why the liver says, okay, here, heart, this is what we have. And so now you put together, because it's in charge of the Shen, or the mind. So it's going to take the clues from the right side of the brain, send it to the left side of the brain to make your storyboard. Bada bing, there's your dream. Earth element, again, has a lot to do with your blood sugar and with immunity. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about this. I'm going off subject kind of slightly, but you will see under emotion, it says under the earth element, emotion, bring that down. You have preoccupation, harmonizing, and obsessiveness. So, as I mentioned, the spleen and the pancreas are considered one organ system, even though they have separate functions. The pancreas deals a lot with blood sugar. So, in my book, you will note that I highly recommend to my patients and to anyone to stay away from fruit. Because what is fruit? It is sugar. It's sugar water if you break down the components. Banana is going to be a little bit different. Talk about that here in a second. But the sugar water will shoot your blood sugar up, and the water itself will bring your body temperature down. So one of the things that happens with fruit, and also with some chocolates, is you'll notice that your mind can't shut off, that it just keeps going. It's like you've repeated that same verse. You're singing that same verse in your head over and over and over again, and you can't shut it off. And that's the obsessiveness, the harmonizing, the preoccupation with things. And that comes from eating fruit. So stay away from fruit. Sorry, got off subject. But if you don't, then know that the spleen is in charge of immunity. So by eating this fruit that's supposed to be healthy for you, will actually start to damage your immune system. So your body won't be able to fight things off near as easily as it could before. And so what is also related to the immune system is your lungs, because your lungs are what we call the cap of all the organs. And so what happens in the lungs will affect everything else in your body. Your lungs are to be taken care of. They're also paired with the large intestine. Now, here's an interesting little thing about your dreams and the large intestine. Almost always, your dreams will be talking about your yin organs or the zang organs. The fu organs or the yang aren't in there very often. However, how many times have you dreamt that you were back in school, right? You've got the test coming up that you didn't study for. Well, that's your liver kind of stressed out about that. But a lot of times you will go through the hallways. What's in the hallways at school is the metal. So all those metal lockers on the side that we used to have as kids. But the hallway itself is showing you the pathway of the large intestine. So this is one of the very few times that a young organ will show up, because for every rule there's an exception, right? And this is one of them. And so if your hallway is packed full of kids, moving about, going from class to class, you might have some obstruction in your large intestine. But if it's clear, it's usually showing a fairly clear path, but it's also showing you all of the metal, that there's something going on with the lungs. It could be large intestine as well. So just keep that in mind. So with your water element, kidney and bladder are the primary organs there. The young organ, bladder, you know that one. If you've ever had a bladder infection before, woo, doggies. But the kidneys, we don't get infections there very often. But when we do, they're doozies, right? And so, but your body has been telling you for a while that there's something going on with your kidneys. So please pay attention to that as well. If you hear something, you have something going on with your ears, that could be related to the kidneys. The nose, of course, is the outward manifestation of the metal or the lungs. The lips have to do with the earth element, which I told you that the earthy girls, a little bit hippier, a little thicker on the legs. They also usually have very pretty lips that are full and red. So that's one way that you can kind of spot them out. The fire element, it's more about your speech and about how loudly you talk. People who are deficient in their heart pathway are very. I saw a girl the other day, took my truck in to have some work done, and she's whispering at me. I was like, man, you got to speak up. I'm a little bit older. I can't hear a word you're saying. But she was whispering, obviously, kind of a shy girl, not confident in what it was that she was doing. I'm going to say another thing about the fire element as well. I was a very very shy little girl. You would never know that by knowing me now, but I would cross the street to avoid coming in contact with someone because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. It was very uncomfortable for me. I also used to have, well, I still have, it's a diagonal crease on the earlobe. That is something that's called Frank's sign. Don't ask me who Frank is. No one could ever tell me who he was, but it's called Frank's sign. And that indicates that you have a potential cardiac issue. Well, I used to have palpitations all the time growing up. Never knew what it was or why I had it. And I used to be an EMT, so the ER doc was really good looking. So I always found ways, to go and talk to him. And I told him about the palpitations, and he listened, and he said, I don't really, he said, that's normal. He said, don't worry about it. A lot of people have them. It's not normal. It's very abnormal. Even when I was in school to be an EMT, we had a medical section there. And the girl was listening to my heart, and she didn't have very good bedside manner because she looked terrified. I was like, what? I thought I was dying. So she went and got the other nurse, and they listened. And so I have something that's called a systolic click, which only means that the valve was a little sticky. And so that was it. It was not a big deal at all, but that was part of the problem that was causing the palpitations. After my first acupuncture treatment, she hit a point here, pericardium 6. There's a nerve that runs underneath there. Boy, howdy, she hit that thing with that needle, and I felt like I shot electricity out of my fingers. Oh my God, I've got superpowers. But once she hit that, it cleared that heart pathway, and I didn't have any more palpitations after that. It was that easy to fix. So something to think about. Also, if you have a child that is extremely shy, you'll see that they probably do dream a great deal. And this is acupuncture can actually help with that as well. Also, if they have nightmares or night terrors, as some people like to call them, that's almost always the kidneys. Kidneys go through a lot of changes. Just make sure they have some good, healthy spring water, not purified water, not anything else weird. Just spring water is the best. It has the minerals in it that your body needs. So, children, you want to be very careful with. The pregnancy, as I mentioned before, if you have any dreams that are out of the ordinary, moms will always have really scary dreams in the beginning because the liver is the biggest organ that the baby is trying to develop. And so, as the baby is developing this, the first trimester is all about that baby's taking your liver energy. And so, as a result, you will have a lot of scary dreams, especially if it's your first pregnancy. They're kind of violent, vicious, and scary because we're terrified, we're terrified of the baby, actually. But anyway, it all works out. Don't worry about it. Second trimester. This is when your kidneys become very deficient. You'll have a lot of dreams about kidney, a lot of water dreams. But what happens is, like I said, the kidneys are the core temperature. And so during the end of the second trimester, into the 6th month, you have this thing that's called the burning of the bones, is what it's referred to in Chinese medicine. And that's where your kidney energy gets really high to try to solidify the little gelatinous fetus that's inside you so it can survive outside of the womb. And so you'll notice you'll get really, really hot and you'll want a lot of water. Try to stay away from ice water, cools down your body too much, confuses your kidneys thinking it's cold, and it tries to get a little bit overheated again too. So anyway, that's kind of my thing in a nutshell. And if you have any questions, if I completely confused you, don't worry, I'm here for you. You can get hold of Tammy, or you have my email address, and feel free to contact me with any questions that you have.
You are awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm going to go ahead and put your email on one more time because this was awesome. I wrote down so many notes, and I actually have had some kids that have had night terrors, and I didn't even think about how that pertained to the kidneys. So I wrote that down. Something else that really stood out to me personally is I do have a son who does have a curvature in the spine. And so I wrote down that I should talk to you about that. I don't know exactly what to do for that. Besides, I kind of got the drift about water, just making sure he's drinking enough water. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. On that one. And there are other things that can be done. We'll talk about that, on a private conversation. But
do you have any recommendations for people who have smoked in the past who are looking to do more healing for their lungs? I know you said that they can't get it back all of the way, but is there anything that you'd recommend right off of the bat?
Yeah. Actually, once you quit smoking, you're totally out of it. Also, stay away from potatoes. Potatoes produce a lot of mucus, which will go straight to your lungs. And take up a wind instrument, like a flute or clarinet or trumpet, whatever it is, and that will help to exercise your lungs.
That's awesome to know that. Actually, I did end up going to a powwow up at Fort Hall, which is like maybe an hour and a half or so away from me. And the thing that I felt like I really needed was one of the flutes. It was really interesting because it was programmed to the frequency of the heart chakra. So I was like, that's cool.
Nice.
And I just practiced playing that for, I don't know, like a few weeks. And it felt like whatever was in my lungs shifted out. So that's cool. I've actually had some experience with that. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you so much. This has been really awesome.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me, Tammy. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. You're awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye, everyone.